Welcome to a special edition of AI Historic Expeditions. Today, we present to you a riveting compilation from our popular series, Influential Women of French History. We are showcasing 9 remarkable women: Joan of Arc, Marie Antoinette, Anne of Brittany, Eleanor of Aquitaine, George Sand, Madame de Pompadour, Madame de Maintenon, Christine de Pizan, and Catherine de Medici. From the battlefields to the courtrooms, from the palaces to the libraries, their impact resonates across the centuries. Our first story brings to life a maiden whose courage echoed through the battlefield, Joan of Arc. Born in 1412, Joan of Arc's journey from humble peasant girl in the small village of Domremy to leading the French army against the English during the 100 Years' War is nothing short of extraordinary. Her name is synonymous with courage, faith, and heroism. However, there's so much more to Joan's life than meets the eye. Joan's early years in Domremy were formative in shaping her destiny. Born to Jacques d'Arc and Isabelle Romay, she was one among 5 children. Their life was simple, rooted in faith and hard work. But this pastoral existence was shattered by the ravages of the ongoing 100 Years' War. It was in Domremy where Joan first heard the voices. At the age of 13, she claimed that Saint Michael, Saint Catherine, and Saint Margaret began to speak to her, urging her to drive out the English and bring the Dauphin Charles to Reims for his coronation. And it wasn't just the voices that were unusual for a girl of her status. Joan's insistence on wearing men's clothing was unheard of at the time, and was part of what made her stand out, and also part of what led to her downfall. Joan was granted an audience with the Dauphin at the royal court in Chinon, and remarkably, she won his trust. She was given armor, a horse, a banner, and was put at the head of his army, an exceptional position for a woman, let alone a peasant girl. She then led French troops to victory in the Siege of Orleans, a pivotal event in the 100 Years' War. Her strategic brilliance turned the tides in favor of the French. However, the crowning achievement came when she fulfilled her divine mission by ensuring Charles VII's coronation at Reims. The trust she garnered from Charles had reached its zenith. But this trust proved to be short-lived. Joan was captured by the Burgundians at Compiègne and sold to the English. Charles VII, whose crown Joan had ensured, made no attempt to rescue her. The abandonment was stark. The trial that followed under the leadership of Bishop Pierre Cauchon was marred by bias and irregularities. Joan was accused of heresy and transvestism. Her conviction led to her being burnt at the stake at the age of 19. But her story didn't end there. 25 years later, the church nullified Joan's trial, and she was declared a martyr. Joan's story serves as a testament to courage and faith. From a humble village girl to a national icon and a saint, her journey remains unmatched. Though her life was cut short, her influence on French history is indelible. From a young woman of courage, we traverse to the decadent halls of Versailles, featuring the story of the infamous queen, Marie Antoinette. Born into Austrian nobility as an archduchess, Marie Antoinette was thrust into the spotlight of French monarchy when she married the future King Louis XVI at the tender age of 14. From here, her life unfurled amidst intrigue, opulence, and eventual tragedy. As Queen of France, Marie Antoinette, initially greeted warmly by the French people, had no official role other than to produce a male heir to continue the Louis XVI's line. This was a time of change, and the French people hoped that the new young king would bring about much-needed reforms. However, this goodwill quickly eroded. As the king's economic policies faltered and an heir was not forthcoming, Louis XVI appeared disengaged from governance. Meanwhile, Marie Antoinette became a social butterfly, frequenting the opera and dances, and was known for partying late into the night at Versailles. To understand Marie Antoinette's role in the sparking of the French Revolution, we must first explore the socio-economic conditions of late 18th century France. The grandeur of Versailles stood in stark contrast to the hardships faced by the French populace. Rising bread prices, heavy taxation, and a rigid class structure placed an unbearable burden on the common people, who looked towards the monarchy with growing resentment. Marie Antoinette's foreign origins and lavish lifestyle made her an easy target for detractors. Unfairly blamed for the country's financial woes, she was slandered by revolutionary propaganda, her private life scandalized, undermining her public image and further fueling revolutionary sentiments. Louis XVI, on the other hand, struggled with indecisiveness and a lack of foresight. His inability to implement effective financial reforms further deepened the country's economic crisis. After years of pressure, Marie Antoinette gave birth to her first child, Marie-Thérèse Charlotte, in December 1778. 3 more children followed, but tragedy struck when her first son, the Dauphin, died on June 4, 1789, just days before the historic tennis court oath. This loss had Marie Antoinette in mourning during the pivotal early days of the French Revolution. The revolutionary tide forced the royal family to abandon Versailles for the Tuileries Palace in Paris. There, they lived under prison-like conditions, with Marie Antoinette clandestinely seeking aid from fellow European monarchs. An attempt to escape in June 1791, rumored to have been planned by one of the Queen's alleged lovers, Swedish Count Axel von Fersen, ended in failure. The royal family was captured in Varennes, halfway to the border, and returned to Paris as prisoners of the revolutionary government. On August 10, 1792, militants stormed the royal palace and demanded the suspension of the king. Soon after, France was declared a republic, and Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette were stripped of their titles, accused of treason. Louis XVI was executed in January 1793, making Marie Antoinette a widow. Following a brief trial, during which she was accused of treason and sexual abuse of her son, Marie Antoinette was executed by guillotine on October 16, 1793. She was 37 years old. Thus, the life of Marie Antoinette, a woman born into Austrian nobility and thrust into French history, serves as a vivid testament to the tumultuous events leading up to the French Revolution. Her story and legacy continue to captivate us today. If you're as intrigued by these fascinating stories as we are, please consider sharing this video with other history enthusiasts. If you're new to our channel, don't forget to hit the subscribe button to join us on future historic expeditions. Our journey through influential women of French history now leads us to the life of the woman who held the French crown twice, the ever-resilient Anne of Brittany. The Duchy of Brittany, a feudal state that existed between approximately 939 and 1547, covered the northwestern peninsula of Europe, bordered by the Atlantic Ocean and the English Channel. This duchy was established after the expulsion of Viking armies from the region around 939. Politically unstable during the 10th and 11th centuries, the duchy often found itself in conflict or alliance with its neighbor, the Duchy of Normandy. The independent sovereign nature of the duchy began to come to an end with the death of Francis II in 1488. The duchy was inherited by his daughter Anne, but King Charles VIII of France had his existing marriage annulled and then married her himself. They had 4 children, but all died young. Charles VIII died in a freak accident in 1498, leaving Anne a widow and the sole owner of the duchy. Soon after, Louis XII, successor to Charles VIII, sought to marry her. Anne agreed, provided Louis XII's union with Jeanne de France was annulled. The marriage contract between Louis XII and Anne was signed on January 7, 1499, where Louis XII pledged to respect the privileges of Brittany. The marriage took place the following day. Anne spent much of her time on the administration of Brittany, making the preservation of the duchy her life's work. Unfortunately, that goal would fail shortly after her death. Beyond her political work, Anne was also a patron of the arts, commissioning tapestries and illuminating manuscripts. She was a devoted mother and commissioned books to aid in the education of her children. Anne of Brittany was well educated herself, which was not common for women during that period. She was fluent in Latin and had a good understanding of Greek and Hebrew. Anne greatly expanded her household at court, especially in regard to young girls, and she maintained a retinue of 100 Breton gentlemen. Anne issued the Permis au Voyage, a law that allowed women in Brittany to inherit property in their own right. This was a progressive law that challenged the traditional laws of the time. The union of Anne and Louis XIV symbolized the coming together of the Breton people and the French. One such public display was during the Battle of Saint-Mathieu, where a united Franco-Breton fleet fought against the English marine. Anne of Brittany, a fiercely intelligent and determined woman, was a symbol of unity between Brittany and France. This union was a critical step in the formation of modern-day France. Leaving the Renaissance period behind, we travel further back in time to discover the indomitable spirit of Eleanor of Aquitaine, a queen of two nations. Born in Poitiers, a city on the River Claine in west-central France, Eleanor became the heir to the Duchy of Aquitaine, the largest and richest province in France. Raised as the eldest daughter of William X, Duke of Aquitaine, she inherited his titles and lands upon his death in 1137. She was the most eligible bachelorette in Europe due to the immense wealth and power her inheritance brought her. Her first marriage to Louis VII of France elevated her status to the Queen of France. Known for her active participation in state affairs, Eleanor was more than just a queen consort. In 1145, when Pope Eugene III called Louis VII to lead a crusade to the Middle East, Eleanor didn't hold back. She eagerly joined the crusade and recruited her ladies-in-waiting and hundreds of vassals for this military expedition. The Second Crusade, initiated from Europe as a sacred war against Islam, ended in a significant defeat for Louis and a triumphant victory for the Muslim forces. After the crusade, their marriage faced challenges. Allegations of Eleanor's affair with her uncle Raymond of Antioch during the crusade and the couple's increasing estrangement led to their marriage being annulled in March 1152. Within weeks of her annulment, Eleanor married the future King Henry II of England, becoming Queen of England and giving birth to 5 sons and 3 daughters. Eleanor's court was not just a political power center. It was a flourishing hub of culture and arts. Her court of love, though its existence is debated, was believed to have attracted artists and poets, significantly contributing to the propagation of courtly love literature in Western Europe. 2 of Eleanor's sons with Henry, Richard I and John, would ascend to the throne of England. Richard, known as Richard the Lionheart, was celebrated for his military prowess. His younger brother John, although a capable ruler, has been immortalized as the villain in the Robin Hood legends. Eleanor faced numerous hardships and challenges throughout her life. One such ordeal occurred in 1773 when she actively supported her eldest son, Henry the Young King, in his rebellion against his father, King Henry II. As a consequence of her involvement, Eleanor endured a grueling 16-year period of imprisonment. After Henry II's death and her subsequent release, Eleanor served as a regent during the reign of her son Richard I, effectively governing the country during his absence. During Richard's capture by the Holy Roman Emperor, Eleanor negotiated his release. After Richard's death, Eleanor ensured her youngest son John's succession to the throne. Eleanor died in 1204 at the ripe age of 82. She was buried in a tomb at Fontevraud Abbey, which she designed herself, beside her husband Henry and her son Richard. Her effigy depicts her reading a Bible, decorated with magnificent jewelry. From queens, we shift our gaze towards a revolutionary woman of words. Prepare to be enthralled by the story of the trailblazing writer, George Sand. Sand was a woman of many talents, a novelist, memoirist, journalist, and so much more. In her lifetime, her fame soared higher than that of even Victor Hugo or Honoré de Balzac in England in the 1830s and 1840s. With over 50 volumes of works to her credit, she was a tour de force in the European Romantic era. Now, one aspect of Sand that really stood out was her unconventional attire. You see, in the 19th century, women needed a permit to wear male clothing. Sand defied this rule, donning male attire without a permit. Not only was it less expensive and more comfortable, but it also gave her access to places which barred women. She was even known to smoke tobacco in public, a habit not yet sanctioned for women of her time. If you're enjoying this journey so far, make sure to give this video a like and subscribe to our channel to stay updated on our historical expeditions. Let's delve into the personal life of Sand. At the age of 18, Sand married François Casimir Dudevant, and they had 2 children. Her romantic pursuits were numerous and diverse, involving notable figures such as the novelist Jules Sandeau, dramatist Alfred de Musset, and composer Frédéric Chopin. Sand's relationships were not just limited to men. She also had a romantic relationship with actress Marie Dorval. By the age of 27, Sand was Europe's most popular writer. Her works were in such high demand that 4 separate editions of her complete works were published during her lifetime. Even after her death, her literary estate was sold for an impressive amount. Her work was greatly admired by her peers, including Honoré de Balzac, Gustave Flaubert, and Eugène Delacroix. Even outside of France, her influence was profound. The Russian author Fyodor Dostoevsky was known to have read many of her novels and even translated one of them into Russian. Sand's writing often highlighted social issues, and she was an advocate for the poor. She was deeply involved in the 1848 revolution in France, believing in the ideals of socialism. Later in life, Sand developed a strong interest in spirituality and mysticism, incorporating these themes into her later works. George Sand passed away on June 8, 1876, at the age of 71, leaving behind a legacy that was as unique and bold as she was. She was buried in her private graveyard behind the chapel at Nohant-Vic. A century later, a plan to move her remains to the Pantheon in Paris sparked controversy. Returning to the royal court, we bring to you the next story, shedding light on the life of the influential courtesan, Madame de Pompadour. Born on the 29th of December, 1721 in Paris, Jeanne Antoinette's life was shrouded in mystery from the beginning. With her biological father's identity remaining a subject of speculation, her life took an unexpected turn when her legal guardian, Charles-François Paul Lenormand de Tournehem, stepped in after her father fled France. Jeanne Antoinette's early education was fit for a queen, something a fortune teller prophesied when Jeanne was still a girl. Groomed for greatness, she excelled in arts, dancing, and even memorized entire plays. At the age of 19, she was wedded to Charles-Guillaume Lenormand d'Étiolles, the nephew of her guardian, promising her a life of luxury and setting her path towards the royal court. Did you know that despite being a married woman, Jeanne Antoinette was able to frequent celebrated salons in Paris? These salons were the hub of intellectual discourse, allowing her to rub shoulders with figures of enlightenment like Voltaire and Montesquieu. What do you think about this? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Jeanne Antoinette's charm and intellect were not unnoticed. Louis XV had heard her name as early as 1742, and their first encounter was nothing short of a storybook. Striving to catch the king's eye, she boldly crossed his path during a royal hunt. Soon, she received a formal invitation to attend a masked ball at the Palace of Versailles, marking the beginning of their romantic entanglement. By March 1745, Jeanne Antoinette was the king's mistress, with an apartment directly above his at Versailles. To secure her place at court, she needed a title, and thus the Marquisate of Pompadour was bought for her, establishing her as Madame de Pompadour. Her role, however, was not just confined to the king's chambers. She wielded political influence and patronized the arts, a contribution that we will explore later in this episode. As the king's favorite, Madame de Pompadour had access to his inner circle and the opportunity to influence court politics. Her detractors often found themselves marginalized, while those in her favor enjoyed the king's attention. She also influenced France's foreign policy, notably with her support of the diplomatic revolution in 1756 that aligned France with its longtime enemy, Austria. Despite her involvement in politics, Madame de Pompadour did not abandon her passion for the arts. She actively patronized artists, architects, philosophers, and writers. In fact, she played a crucial role in the development of the Rococo art style and the rise of French neoclassicism. Madame de Pompadour played a significant role in the development of the Sèvres porcelain factory. She helped transform it into one of the leading porcelain manufacturers in Europe. Madame de Pompadour's influence remained, despite the fact that she and Louis XV were no longer involved romantically after 1750. Her continuous presence at court was seen as an anomaly, leading to rumors and criticisms. Yet she maintained her relevance through her intellect, charm, and the deep friendship she shared with the king. Madame de Pompadour died at the age of 42, leaving behind a legacy of political influence, patronage of the arts, and a unique role in French history. She was not just a king's mistress, she was a friend, a confidant, and a woman of substantial influence in her own right. In the next story, we narrate the tale of a woman who rose from obscurity to be the unofficial Queen of France, Madame de Maintenon. Françoise d'Aubigné, better known as Madame de Maintenon, is a figure shrouded in mystery and enigma. From a childhood marked by humble origins, she rose to a position of extraordinary influence at the heart of French royalty. Françoise's birth took place in the year 1635 in the town of Niort, located in western France. She was born into an impoverished noble family. Her father, Constant d'Aubigné, was a Huguenot who found himself imprisoned due to his involvement in a conspiracy against Cardinal Richelieu, the influential chief minister of King Louis XIII. Growing up, Françoise spent her formative years in close proximity to the towering walls of the local prison. As she grew older, her path would lead her to the opulence of the French court. Starting her journey as a governess, she found favor in the royal household and earned the trust and affection of King Louis XIV. While her influence in the court was growing, Françoise also made her mark on education in France. She established the Maison Royale de Saint-Louis, a school for girls from impoverished noble families. This was groundbreaking for its time and shows her forward-thinking approach to women's education. If you're enjoying this dive into the life of Madame de Maintenon, make sure to like this video and share it with your history buff friends. Your support helps us bring more of these fascinating stories to you. In addition to her influence in the court and education, Françoise was deeply connected with the Jansenists at Port Royal. This religious movement within Catholicism emphasized original sin and the necessity of divine grace. How do you think her beliefs influenced her actions at court? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Madame de Maintenon left an invaluable resource for historians, her extensive correspondence. These letters offer unique insights into her life and the politics of the time. Though never officially recognized, it's widely believed that she significantly influenced King Louis XIV's policies. Notably, she may have played a role in the revocation of the Edict of Nantes previously issued by Henry IV of France, which had previously granted significant rights to French Protestants. Madame de Maintenon outlived Louis XIV by 4 years, spending her final years in relative solitude, a stark contrast to the glittering court life she had once known. The life of Madame de Maintenon was one of remarkable ups and downs, secrecy, and influence. From the prison walls of her childhood to the opulent halls of Versailles, her story is a fascinating chapter in French history. Entering the world of literature once more, we explore the inspiring life of the pioneering Christine de Pizan. Born in Venice in 1364, Christine's life took a dramatic turn when her father, Tommaso di Benvenuto da Pizzano, a renowned physician, accepted an invitation to join the court of Charles V of France. As a result, Christine was exposed to the intellectual riches of the royal court at a very young age, which shaped her future profoundly. At age 15, she married Etienne du Castel, notary and royal secretary. Christine found comfort in her new husband, a man who encouraged her pursuit of knowledge, a rarity during that era. However, A decade into their marriage, Christine's world was shattered when Etienne passed away, leaving her a widow at the age of 25 with 3 children. Christine turned to writing as a means to support her family, launching a prolific career that was nothing short of revolutionary. Despite the constraints of the late medieval period, Christine de Pizan became the first woman in Europe to support herself and her family by her pen alone. She wrote on a wide variety of topics, ranging from poetry to military strategy. Her clients were no ordinary folk. They were members of the French royal court, including King Charles VI. It's fascinating to imagine a woman writing about military strategy, don't you think? What are your thoughts on Christine's unique journey? Let us know in the comments below. Not only did Christine pen works on an array of subjects, but she also used her writing to challenge the prevalent gender stereotypes of her time. She embarked on a literary mission to defend women's worth. Her most famous work, The City of Ladies, written in 1405, celebrated women's achievements. And it wasn't just about challenging norms. Christine engaged in an intense literary debate known as the Quarrel of the Rose. This public intellectual dispute was about the interpretation of Jean de Meun's Romance of the Rose, which Christine claimed to contain elements against women. Christine de Pizan's influence was far-reaching, with more than 100 manuscripts of her works surviving, an exceptionally high number for a medieval writer. And though she lived in the Middle Ages, her ideas mirrored those of the Renaissance humanists who came later. She emphasized logic, reason, and critical thinking, also advocating for women's education, viewpoints quite ahead of her time. After an illustrious career in writing, Christine retired to a convent, where it's believed she lived until her death in 1430. Our journey through influential women of French history concludes with the 9th story focusing on a woman of foreign birth, who wielded immense power in the heart of France, Catherine de Medici. Born on April 13, 1519, in Florence, to Lorenzo de Medici and Madeleine de la Tour d'Auvergne, Catherine was part of the powerful Medici family. Orphaned within months of her birth, she was raised by her paternal aunt, Clarice de Medici. In 1533, at the age of 14, Catherine married Henry, Duke of Orléans, the second son of King Francis I of France. However, in 1536, Henry's older brother Francis tragically died after catching a chill from a game of tennis. Henry then became the heir apparent. Suspicions of foul play circulated, with accusations leveled at various individuals, including Catherine herself. After Francis's death, Catherine became Queen of France when her husband ascended to the throne as King Henry II in 1547. Their union resulted in 10 children, 7 of whom survived infancy. 3 of her sons, Francis II, Charles IX, and Henry III, each reigned as King of France. On July 10, 1559, King Henry II died from a jousting wound, and their eldest son, Francis II, became king at the age of 15. As he was underage, Catherine was appointed governor of France, effectively serving as regent. Following the premature death of Francis II, Catherine continued as regent for her second son, Charles IX, until he reached maturity. In 1566, amidst the tensions of the French Wars of Religion, Charles IX and Catherine proposed an audacious plan to the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire. This plan would have created a colony in Ottoman-controlled Moldavia to relocate Huguenots from France. However, the Sultan was not interested. The tensions culminated in an infamous event, the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre. Just days before the massacre, a significant Huguenot leader, Admiral Coligny, was wounded in an assassination attempt. The attack on Coligny was followed by a bloodbath beyond anyone's control, beginning on St. Bartholomew's Day. This event has since cast a dark shadow over Catherine's reputation. The slaughter persisted for almost a week in Paris and spread to other parts of France, continuing well into the autumn. This dark season of violence came to be known as St. Bartholomew's season. In a shocking turn of events, Prince Henry of Navarre, a prominent Huguenot figure, converted to Catholicism under duress. Catherine's response was laughing at the news, which marked the origin of her legend as a cunning and ruthless queen. Beyond politics, Catherine was a patron of the arts and influenced the French Renaissance. She was responsible for building two magnificent chateaux of the Loire Valley, the Château de Chenonceau and the Château de Monceau. Catherine de Medici passed away on January 5, 1589, age 69. Her influence shaped French history, and her descendants continued to rule France for decades. Thus, we end our journey through the lives of these influential women of French history. Each in their own way shaped the course of events, challenged conventions, and etched their names into the annals of French history. They continue to inspire us, reminding us of the power of resilience and the indomitable spirit of humanity. Until our next historic expedition, au revoir.